Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Today, we'll be speaking about RCA templates and presenting the webinar today. If you haven't met him, this is Brian Hughes, the president of Sologic. And thank you for joining us. I'll be moderating this webinar. So if there's any questions, feel free to type it in the chat box or the Q&A box. I'll be monitoring and interrupting as needed.
Interrupting and as needed, which might have to happen, but we'll see. Thanks, Michelle. So this is a super fun topic, and I think it's super useful as well. And I don't know, we'll see if we take the whole hour or not, but as we dig into this sort of concept of templating, the idea is there a way for us to make the RCAs, especially RCAs around different problem types, can we make them a little faster? Can we make them more complete? Can we help new users do a better and more complete job of RCA? And can we do all this without compromising quality? And I think the answer is yes. Certainly that we're using templates as our standard for different, I guess, problem types. And so what I'll do is I'll show you a few of the templates that we're using, and I'll also show you kind of what we're doing when we create these to give you an idea of the process and how we can also use causal to store templates and use those for future RCAs. And I'm open, by the way, to folks on the line, and I appreciate everybody showing up on your Friday. Michelle, I'm going to ask you, did you see the moon and Jupiter this morning off in the east as you were rising at 5 a.m.?
No, I did not.
I'm going to send you a picture.
Okay.
It was one of the coolest things. Hopefully some of you all on the line saw the awesome moon this morning, but I'm declaring it to be fall, and it was crisp but beautiful. And so hopefully everybody's got a good weekend plan. All right, so let's dig in just a little bit further. So we are, Sologic is a global, if you don't know Sologic, then I'll let you can go to our website and find out a lot more about us, but we do have a global capability. We are currently based in Seattle, Washington as of August 1st. That's where Michelle and I are, and a bunch of us, what would you call, I guess you would call us Sologic-ites, Sologicians. I don't know. We're gonna have to figure that out. But we work in a ton of different industries and a lot of different disciplines. In fact, this week I was at NSC, National Safety Conference, or National Safety Congress, at their National Safety Conference, which they call Expo, the conference and Expo, and it was great. I had a speaking slot on Wednesday. But also, it's just always a good time to meet up with our friends in the field and clients that like clients, maybe some of you, I don't know, I have to check the list here, but we focus in the world of safety, but we also look at quality, reliability, operations, IT, supply chain, whatever. And the idea here is that these concepts are applicable across a wide range of industries, but also across a wide range of what we call disciplines, or I guess whatever sectors. Well, you take your pick, call it what you want. And I think as it pertains to this particular webinar, we can build some really neat templating of RCAs around safety, around quality assurance, around reliability and maintenance, around some operational related issues. And so I'm going to look for a host of different opportunities really to sort of show how we may use templates or create templates and adjust templates and customize them and all of that sort of thing. So as we move along, go ahead and offer your ideas in the chat. Honestly, if you have an idea, if you're say, hey, Brian, I would love to see you build a template around this particular problem type, and I'll just do it live on the webinar. No problem. Now, I might reserve the right to improve it later, so we'll get a start on it anyway. So we love our clients, and the diversity of the clients that we work with speak to the power and the universality of our process and our software. And then also just being able to see problems from a variety of different perspectives, that having this diversity of a client base provides us This is what allows us to see commonalities across all of these different problem types. And those commonalities are how these templates are born or where they're born from. Okay. So, all righty. Well, so for those of you that aren't familiar with our process, I'm going to jump ahead to the 5 steps of what we do when we go through a Sologic RCA. So, step number one, we gather and manage data. We need data and information about the problem to make sure that we're dealing in the world of facts. We then write a problem statement. The problem statement identifies what the problem is that we're focusing on, when that problem happened, where it happened, what the impact of the problem is, both actual and potential. Then we analyze the causes. And analyzing cause and effect, we use a conditional logic model to analyze cause and effect. It's sort of an if then, if this, then that model. And I'll dig into that a little bit more as we get further into the details of the webinar. But this is largely where I want to focus our time around templating. Even though templates can be useful here and here as well, I'm mostly going to focus on the cause and effect chart because that's kind of the area where people have maybe the most difficulty or what they find to be the most challenging. All right, so then after that, we identify solutions and then we bundle everything up into a report. So these are the 5 steps of our Sologic RCA process, but we incorporate HOP principles or human and organizational performance principles at each step of the way. So we subscribe to these as you learn from HOP experts like Todd Conklin or Bob Edwards or Andrea Baker or these folks that are so smart in this area. The way that we take human and organizational performance principles and then weave them into the process that we provide, what this does is it allows for us to work closely together productively as a team and then utilize these HOP principles as we work through our Sologic RCA process. And there's an ebook that we have available on our website. It's a free download, and you can read about how we do that. And also, if you want to reach out to me or Michelle or whoever, and we'll just talk to you about it too. Okay, so let's dig into the material. Um, when we are analyzing cause and effect, I mentioned that we use a conditional logic model. If this occurs, then the result will be this outcome. And if you're familiar with Sologic at all, you know that we actually are not just single dimension. So I guess the classic one-dimensional cause and effect analysis process that uses conditional logic is the 5 whys, right? So if I have my can of Coke here, Coke Zero. I'm not a This is leftover from our seminar last week. Like normally I'm not a soda person, but I wanted something other than coffee, and here it was. So in any case, if I spill my Coke, well, let's see if I can get into the focus here. If I spill my Coke, right, you could say, well, what caused the Coke to spill? Well, I upset the can or I tipped over the can. But every time I tip over a can, that doesn't necessarily result in spilled Coke. I also have to have Coke in the can, and I also have to have an opening on the top of the can for the Coke to come out of. So okay, here's the conditional logic. If I tip the can and there's Coke in the can and there's an opening at the top of the can, then the Coke is going to spill, right? So we take that single dimension of 5 whys and we're going to blow that out into multiple dimensions. So here's an example of that. Let's say that I were to take the Coke can again and dent it, okay? And I dented it because I smacked it with my hand, and you can see that dent that's right in the can. Well, if I have a damaged Coke can, that was caused by impact, but impact alone doesn't necessarily damage the can, right? Because I'm impacting the can right now, and at least that part of it is not damaged, but this part is. That's because the dent in this case is because not only did I impact it, but I impacted that with sufficient force. That plus that equals this. Okay, so when I say that we are based around a conditional logic method, that's what I mean. If, then, right? So if this, then that. But we actually will take it out of that single dimension of 5y's, and we're going to add a second dimension. And that basically is just a plus sign. Impact plus force equals damage. This also, by the way, is a generic cause pattern. We call it causal patterns. You can call it what you want, but it's basically a generic, meaning in this case, damage, right? I didn't say Coke can damaged. I said damage just in general. And in general, damage involving some form of impact can be described as, or can be defined or analyzed in terms of what caused the impact, and then also what caused the force. Okay, these are two different stories and they converge on the focal point. Now, the idea behind cause patterns is kind of the same as cause templates. All a cause template is a combination of causal patterns. Okay, so let's take each of these patterns one by one. So damage involving impact can almost always be described in terms of impact plus force. Okay, you got to have both of those. All right, well, what about impact? Impact can almost always be described as something moving and something else in the pathway, or some variation on that. Okay, so in the case of the dented can, if my hand is moving and the can is in the pathway, then you can see that the impact occurs. Now, it's not a perfect model because my hand is moving right now and the can is in the pathway and there's no impact. They actually has to the impact occurs at that point in time and space where they actually come together. But you get the picture here. What was moving? My hand was moving. The can was in the pathway. Why was that? It was because the position of the can at the time that the hand was moving, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it doesn't have to, these patterns don't have to be perfect, but let's look at force. Force is what we would term a specific, especially when I say sufficient force. Sufficient force is a type of exceedance. All right, well, what do I mean by that? Well, it means just that in this case, with respect to force, that a thing like a Coke can has a certain structural capability to withstand force. By the way, it's not very much. And it's also not very much, particularly once it's been opened. Okay, because then you have you have the ability for the pressure inside the can to equalize outside. So right now in its current state, it doesn't take very much force to dent that can. Now, an engineer, somebody smarter than me for sure, would be able to calculate how much force that can take. But let's just say for now that it can withstand X amount of force. And if the actual force exceeds X, all right, so what we did here is we just said, hey, here's how much it can take. And if the actual exceeds how much it can take, that is a specific definition of sufficient force. All right, so I am kind of taking this to the super detailed degree, but that's the point behind these webinars, right? We're doing deep dive into, the mechanism of what's going on here. Let's abstract back up for a sec. An experienced cause and effect analyst using this method, I can't speak for other methods, but I'm sure that's true too. What humans do is as we achieve a certain degree of proficiency in our craft, and cause and effect analysis is a craft. I like to think of it as a trade more than some kind of scientific analytical method. But it's crafty. And as we achieve a degree of proficiency in our craft, what we do is we identify patterns. We identify shortcuts, but shortcuts, it's a shortcut, but it doesn't necessarily hurt us. It's not like shortcut in a bad way. It's a shortcut in a way that allows us to more quickly identify or to analyze a particular event. So for instance, if someone calls me up, one of you calls me up and says, hey, Brian, I got an issue. And I ask you what that issue is. And you say, geez, my car got dented at the grocery store the other day. Immediately, my brain says, dented car equals damage. and I can apply the impact pattern to that. And then I can ask you the question, okay, well, it sounds like something ran into your car. Is that true? Yeah, the shopping cart ran into my car. So now all of a sudden, I'm looking at the impact. I'm applying this impact pattern, and you told me that the shopping cart was moving and that the car was in the pathway, which caused that impact. But it does not describe the force. And then that makes me think to myself, well, was it like what kind of a car do you have? Do you have a modern car? Do you have a car from the 1950s? Do you have a Corvette, right? So what's the difference between those? Modern cars, they dent easier. Cars from the 1950s had a lot more steel in them. Now, you might scratch the paint, but you're not as likely to dent it. And then Corvette, right, made out of fiberglass. So good luck denting that one. You're not going to. You're going to either, you could crack it, you could punch a hole in it, you could take a chip out of it, but it's just not, the material itself is not subject to denting the way that sheet metal is, right? So I'm immediately listening to what you're telling me in your own words, in your own story. But then behind the scenes, what I'm doing is I'm applying these patterns to what's happening. And in doing that, it makes it faster for me. And believe it or not, it allows me to very quickly dial in the important elements of that story. And so, like, to be honest, I recognized that I was doing this as I was learning how to do cause and effect analysis back when I first started teaching. We don't teach it this way in our intro class. We teach it the old-fashioned way, which is basically start with five whys and then go and then add in your branches one by one, which is a great way to do it, which you should do. You need to know how to build cause and effect analyses without patterns, because what do you do when you come up against something that you've never seen before? So you do need to know how to do it that way. But the more you do it, and by the way, remember I mentioned that we get to work with a lot of different companies in a lot of different problem domains. Well, once you've run through 10 different quality assurance problems, then you start to realize it's like, geez, there are a lot of similarities between all quality assurance related problems. And I can leverage those similarities in my knowledge with and experience with these similarities to make it faster for me to investigate quality assurance problems in the future, right? So the when we're looking at these different patterns, fire is maybe the one that everybody is the most familiar with. The fire triangle, right? You got some heat, you have combustible material, and you have oxygen. And everybody learns this at some point in time, but we represent it in the form of a cause and effect diagram. Fire is a cause pattern. And so if we're investigating a fire or even an explosion, then what we do is we add the fire. Or we just look at the different causes in the pattern, and then that shapes the questions that we ask. And oxygen being present, it evokes a contamination pattern. Well, that's not always true. Like right now, I would certainly not consider oxygen to be a contaminant of my office. I kind of like that it's here. But if we're talking about a hydrocarbon storage tank, and we've got oxygen present in the vapor space or the head space of that tank, it most certainly is a contaminant. That's because the expected mix of materials, which is nitrogen or nothing, or CO2, I don't know if anybody pads with CO2. Most of the time, I think people pad with with nitrogen. But the expected mix of materials is different. There is an expected mix and an undesirable material, in this case, oxygen, in what I would consider to be the expected materials. In that case, that's why, so I can use this contamination pattern to dig into the why the oxygen might be present in the headspace of a tank that's got hydrocarbons in it. All right. So anyway, so this is actually all from our webinar on cause patterns. But templates are like cause patterns, but just a step up. So when I'm looking at human error, for instance, and this is something that you guys might get, this is something that maybe we'll do this in as I switch over to CauseLink here in a minute. We're looking at human error as a template. Well, let's start out with the pattern for human error, which is action taken. Almost every time someone says, well, that was a screw up. Whoops. Let's, I gotta hold on here. I'm coming back to you. I have a connection issue with my monitor. Hold on. I think this has happened before, Michelle, but I guarantee it's coming back. In three. No, do it. Don't make me. Why do you? Oh, there it comes. There we go. Okay. With respect to cause patterns, they're just combinations of templates. So when we have a human error, you've got somebody they did something. I don't know if what I just did was that something. I don't think I can call this an error. I've got an issue with my cable. But but some action is taken, and then you can look for either gaps in the plan, process, or procedures, right? So if I did something, and let's say that I followed the recipe and it ended up tasting bad, like because I didn't include salt with my sugary items or whatever like that. Let's say that there's a recipe. My cookies taste terrible. Why is that? Because you screwed them up. Okay, well, that might be true. It's like, well, what did you do? Well, when I mixed my dry goods, I mistakenly added salt instead of sugar. Oh, that's an execution gap. So that would be down here. But let's just say that no, I did it per the recipe. They still don't taste very good. Well, when I go back and look at the recipe, if I see that that there was no addition of your half teaspoon of salt, which is extremely important to make that to help accentuate the overall flavor of the cookie, well, I've got a gap here. And so, well, why did I take that? Well, why were you making cookies in the first place? That's a fair question, I guess. But I have to be able to do it, right? I have to have the means to do it. I also need to be motivated to do so. There needs to be some motivation to make a batch of cookies. Opportunity, it's like the difference between opportunity and means is op I can be physically capable. Like right now, for instance, I am physically capable of making cookies, but I do not have the opportunity to do so because I'm sitting at my desk, actually in the sunshine. Look at this. It's fall day. I'm getting back in, but the sun is moving in its arc and now it's starting to hit me in the face again, like it did during the spring. But I don't have the opportunity to make cookies at the moment because I am at my, let's see, because Michelle, did
Does it
something,
make sense for me to share screen? Because I have your presentation open.
oh, did I not end up, is my screen not sharing?
No, it's just you talking.
Oh, buddy, I'm sorry. No,
No,
here,
no
let's
problem.
try.
I thought you knew and you were just gonna
No, I
yeah.
didn't know it, but here,
Okay, all
let me
right.
open this up. You know what happened is when my cable went south on me, then it screwed up my screen share.
Okay, no problem. All right. Yeah, you're back on.
Okay, good. Hold on. One more time, people. This could be classified as an error, I'm sure. So I'll investigate this later. You can see my screen now?
Yep,
Anyway,
you
so
good.
as I work through the template here, and knowing now that you didn't see it, so human error, what I would do is templatize this, and actually, what I'll do it over in Causlink because I'm going to jump to Causlink right now anyway. There, let's do this. That's not Causlink, but this is. I'm going to go to RCAs, and I've actually got a group called templates. And that allows me to sort of identify which RCAs are tagged as being templates. So it's kind of slick. For those of you that aren't familiar with Causlink, this is our browser-based RCA app, and I'm not going to do a full demo or anything like that. But if I start out in my dashboard, and then we've got an FMEA module, but then we have all of my RCAs here. That's where I want to go. And then I'm going to filter based on, because I've got a group that's defined as templates. And then this gives me the templates that I want to share. The truth is, I want to create a new one, and I'm going to use this. I'm going to get some initial information here. And then for groups, remember, I'm going to actually add this to my templates, and then I'm going to click create. It's not going to let me, it doesn't like it. Oh, yeah. Here, I'm going to say human error template. And now I'll click create. All right. So with templates, these are not meant to be, I guess, we don't mean for people to open this up and start entering information into it. What we mean for people to do is when they open the template up, we copy the template, and then that allows us to rename it. Okay, because we want to start from the template, and if we just open it up and start actually changing the template, then that's no good. Now I can lock that down so nobody can actually change it, but people can view it. So it is possible to ensure that people don't overwrite what's there. But that's a detail that we can talk about that as I dig in a little more, because what I'll do is I'll use these templates to try to show you how I would apply it, and at that point then we can you'll see what I mean by how I duplicate it and then start from the duplicated one. All right, so human error. I'm going to enter that as my focal point, and we're going to keep it generic. I'm not going I'm going to keep it generic, but I also want to caveat that you could potentially create templates for different types of errors. That would not be a problem, but in this case, I'm going to keep it generic so that I'm going to match what we saw over here. Okay, so then I'm going to add action taken in generic. You need to have done something in order to have resulted in an error. I want to know what that action is, but also I want to know, was the plan procedure, what else did I say over here? I'm just gonna mirror this. There we go. Were there gaps, or was it missing, or were there some problem basically with the plan or procedure? And then the other one was, what about my execution of that plan, process, or procedure? Okay, so I'm going to copy that and I'm going to put that right there. All right, now with CausLink, the default is and. Well, over here, you can see that I've got an or. Okay, so I'm going to hover over a line, it turns orange, and now I select or, and now I'm going to drag and drop that to there. And let me zoom in a little bit so you can see it. And so this is the cause pattern for human error. What difference between a pattern and a template? Well, the way that I define a template is that it's got a little more to it. Action taken. Why does anybody do anything? Well, we've got a motivation to act. There's got to be a reason. I'm also going to add the means to take action. I've got to be able to act. I need to have the opportunity to take action. All right. And then these means, motive, and opportunity. That's the same as what you see in old crime dramas, right? Or and when people are trying to prove that somebody did something, these are the things that they have to prove. But then I think the addition of this fourth one is actually really useful, and that is saw no good reason not to act or not to take action. There. Now, that's a template, right? Because here I've got pattern one, and then here I've got another pattern. And these are classic patterns that we utilize. I would guess there's about 25 or 30 patterns that we use pretty frequently and that we draw on to build cause and effect analyses like this. But now what makes this different than cause patterns versus cause template is here it is in CausLink. And so now I can actually save this. And then if I'm teaching in class, for instance, and I'm trying to take human error a little bit further, and this is a template that I can pull up, and then I can actually ask students to, well, actually what I do is they all have access to CausLink. And then what I tell them to do is to just go to your RCAs, and we should see my oh, I thought that I had labeled it as a template. Hold on. Let me make sure I'm in the right spot here. There it is right at the top. Let me just make sure I've got it labeled right. I actually label it right here under groups, templates. There we go. Now I've got my template. Okay. So now when I go to RCAs and I select templates here, there we go. Okay. So I have my human error template. And then what we would do is we copy it, and it takes a second to copy on the server. So I'll let it copy, and then I'm going to open this. And now I'm working from that copy, and I'll change the title. I'll say, oh yeah, here, let's do a real human error from the other day. So human error template, Brian and his keyless deadbolt project. So I'll tell you the story here, and I'm going to jump over to the cause and effect analysis. All right. So here's what I did. I wanted to install a keyless deadbolt on my basement door. Let me just be clear. I am capable of this. I am. I'm talking to myself more than anybody, all right? But I know how to do it. And in fact, it was already all the deadbolt and all that stuff was pulled out anyway because Kathy was painting the door. So that was my opportunity. I was like, oh, I'm out and about. Home Depot is like 5 minutes up the road. I'm not putting that old deadbolt back on after the paint job is done. I'm gonna put the new keyless, the coded, right? I want to be able to type a code in so that I can get in. And so I looked online for the best one, and I went to Home Depot and I got it, and I also got the door handle that goes along with it, right? Because the deadbolt alone, you need to have a handle as well. And then when I came back, I realized that not only does the keyless deadbolt actually have a key, because it does. Because what do you do when the battery runs out, right? Well, that's great. Well, now I've got redundancy, but it's like, okay, well, the key on the deadbolt doesn't match the key on the handle. Because for whatever reason, I thought that I wanted to also be able to lock the door knob as well as the deadbolt. Why? Honestly, I don't know. I don't know. I thought about it for a second. It's like, well, if you have a deadbolt, then why do you need to lock the doorknob? And wouldn't that kind of negate the purpose of having a keyless deadbolt? Because what if somebody locks the doorknob, then you come home thinking that you're going to just type in the key, and it's like, wait a minute, so I'm like, now I'm in a conundrum. And so whatever, but I buy them both. But then when I get home, I realize that that the keys are different from one another. So I can sort of reconcile myself with the fact that having a key, putting it in the lockbox is a good idea. But now I just can't handle the fact that there are different keys on the same door. That is not going to fly. So that was my error. Okay, so let's say that human error. Let's say that I purchased non-matching keyed locks, something like that, right? So that kind of gets it across. I don't want to sit and edit in front of all of you guys. So, what did I do? I bought a keyed door knob and a keyless yet keyed deadbolt. All right. So that is what I did. But now is that why they were non-matching? And the truth is that I had gaps in my plan. And so I'm going to leave that there as gaps in my plan. Come on, you. And here's what I did not plan for this job. I winged it. And here's the deal. Like I didn't exactly wing it. Let's just give me a little credit here. I I I thought about it quickly, okay, but I didn't think about it completely. And then once I was there, I was so caught up in the fact that I also had some time constraints, right? So but I was not coming home without this stuff. Now, guess what? I executed it perfectly. I executed my planless I executed my planless action perfectly, and then I ended up at home with these non-matching keyed locks. Okay, so it was not this side of the equation. And if you've been on before and you watch us, or you've been in our webinars before, well, now what do I do with this? I'm actually going to terminate it and call it disproved. And I'm going to go to properties and I'm going to say disproved. Okay, so now what I can do here is I can go forward. I can say I was in a hurry, which is true. And I'm going to add, now I'm adding specifics. I was in a hurry. What else did I do? Even though I'm qualified and capable of turning the screws, I don't have a lot of experience in this specific area. All right, so you kind of get the point. So now you can see what I'm doing here is I opened up my template, I I duplicated it, and now I'm using it as a tool to help me really consider the details of how this error occurred. And of course, I'm making up my own. And I also find that, you know what, it wasn't the execution. The execution was fine. I was able to actually buy the things fine. I didn't get in a car wreck here or there. Um, I may get in a car wreck on my way back to the store for the fourth time, and I'm not kidding. And I'm not going to go into the whole story because it's still a little painful. To finally take back the doorknob, which I already took back once, and then repurchased, and then oh my God, it's just a comedy. Mhm. In any case, the template's helpful. Now up here, I can say, well, why were you doing this in the first place? And I can describe my motivation. My motivation's fine. I just didn't want to have to carry keys around anymore. And by the way, I used it yesterday for the first time, and it was fantastic. I wanted to come in that basement door, and so like it being there was helpful, and it acts the way I was hoping that it would. I had the means to do it, the opportunity to do it. Saw no good reason not to. Now, this is the one that I could explore a little bit further. And I'm not going to just go ahead and we're not going to do this whole thing right now. I'm just trying to show you how a template can be extremely useful and how if imagine so I mean I'm just myself and I actually have a lot of experience doing these kinds of cause and effect analyses. It's actually helpful for me in this very moment. It takes some load off my noggin. It takes some load off my brain, and it allows me to then apply that limited cognitive capacity towards looking at the details and also helping to ensure that I'm not overlooking something. All right. Well, I don't really see anything here that's going to be, I'm going to say, yeah, I'm not going to go down that pathway or this one or this one. But I'm going to dig into this one a little bit further, because this is a pattern for me where I go to the darn hardware store for some project and then it's like a comedy. It's like I'm there the first time and I play a little game with myself. How many times will I be back here for the same stupid project? And so understanding this a little more deeply may actually help my life. Okay, so that's one pattern. Human error is an important pattern. I think we could use this in a lot of places, and we could actually use this template as a part of other templates as well. That gives you an idea. All right, so here, let's see this. Let's move on. I'm going to go to another one. All right, why? Oh, I see. I've got the word human here. Let me get rid of that. There we go. So now here's my quiver, I guess, of templates. This reliability template is one where, honestly, if there was any one template that really sort of cemented in my mind the usefulness of using templates, it would be this one. So this comes primarily from our work with Amazon with their reliability folks. And I've used this though a ton. It actually applies very well to IT service management, which is just a fancy reliability problem, or a reliability problem around electronics. Okay. So, but here, let's dig in. So asset impacted. This is a focal point. We're using a focal point guidance as well. So what we tell people is, look, you got some problem with the piece of equipment. Well, what is the equipment? What's the asset? And how long did it take you to get that asset back up? What that allows us to do, especially with the plus sign right in the middle, is to immediately branch into what we call the fault path, which is going to tell the story of why the asset is down in the first place, and the recovery path, which tells the story of why it took as long as it did to recover. And by the way, it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. This can sometimes be a good story. Okay, so right now, though, this is just a pattern, but let's take it a little further and look at the different elements of the template. Fault path. Okay, so let's talk about the story of why the asset is down. Well, this is a way for us to break that down. Was it an electrical issue? Was it a mechanical issue? Was it a software issue? And actually, right in this very moment, I'm going to add another one, communications issue. Okay, so these are, in other words, there's this, and by the way, a communications issue can be an electric issue. You might say to yourself, well, that's just a subset of this. All right, well, maybe you're right. And when you're building your own template, you can do it that way. So I'm going to put that here. I'm going to refresh my screen because I lost my line. And so then this allows me to consider these things. Okay, so if the asset was down and it was an electrical issue, then like let's say that I had a VFD, that's a variable frequency drive failure. Okay. Well, why did I have a VFD failure? And so it wasn't a mechanical issue. All right. Well, then I'm going to go properties disproved. It was not a software issue. Properties disproved. It was not a communications issue. Properties disproved. Right? So then because I'm digging in here. Now, why is that helpful? Well, because it shows a reader of the report at some future time that we did consider these. It means there was thoughtful consideration given, and it was determined that this was not, in this case, an issue. Okay, so we're going to just call those canceled or dead-ended. Okay, but it was a variable frequency drive failure. And then as we dig into that a little bit further, maybe that was because we had a power sag of greater than, let's call it, I don't know what they can take, but let's say greater than 10 milliseconds, something like that. Okay, so if you have a power sag of greater than 10 milliseconds and the VFD can only withstand fluctuations of less than 5 milliseconds, right? So this is one of those exceedances where you've got it, the power sag was greater than 10 milliseconds. It can handle anything up to 5 milliseconds. Well, there you go. It failed, which is an electrical issue, which is why the asset's down. All right, well, okay, that's fine. Good job, guys. So, why did you have a power sag and the VFD can only withstand that? Here, let's add another one. Let's say that there is no UPS system on this asset, right? So the absence of what we would find on other assets, which would be UPS, and then the nature of this VFD, and then the fact that you have a power sag because, utility. Okay, something like that. Well, that tells the story of the electrical issue, but what about, and by the way, let's kind of bring this back around. What if I'm a new investigator and I would normally say like somebody new out of class, if they gave us even this level of details, pretty good, I would tell them they'd want to go a little bit further, a little bit further than these things. But this is solid logic. They're on the right pathway, all that kind of stuff. But they might not think about the fact that if that if that time to recover was 24 hours. Well, geez, what the heck? I get that you lost your VFD and and I kind of understand that pathway. That's all fine, but it took you guys 24 hours. Why didn't you just slap a new one in there? Well, it took us 15 minutes to make the place safe, so that one's okay. Troubleshooting, we were able to determine pretty quickly based on warnings or alarms at the HMI as to the fact that I had a VFD shut down and I even was able to identify it. So that was really, maybe another 15 minutes. So I've got, maybe a combined 30 minutes here, but then what about like 23 and a half hours to get things up and running? And so that's got to be in the repair. And well, why was that? Well, I did have my people on the site, so it wasn't this one. I did have my tools available, so it wasn't that one. But guess what? No spares. No spares on site in inventory. And it required nearly 20 hours delivery time for my spare VFD. Why is that? Because maybe that's because I have a specialty VFD, da 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 da. No, and you can see what's going on here. So I've got a unique storyline going on out here as to what electrical issue we were dealing with. And the unique storyline going down here that's talking about the fact that I didn't have any spares available. And that's helping to describe more completely this reliability outage. We teach this in class that you're going to always have to talk, you're going to have to tell us these two stories one way or another. And when we do it with a template like this, and we provide them with a template like this, then of course that makes life easier. So that's an example of a reliability related template. Now, because I didn't save it as a new one, I'm going to have to now come in here and actually clean it up. But I'm not going to make you guys watch all that. So um, I will now move on to, actually, it's pretty easy if I do this, delete, 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 and delete. Now I'm back to 0. Okay. So, and you might be asking yourself, well, why don't you guys just create the ability to make templates? Well, we will. We got some things on our plate. Where we're going with this ultimately is the ability to have template library right over here. And so as we will ship with certain standard templates, and then we'll allow you to modify and save them, create your own. And I can even see at some point allowing for templates to like users to share templates with each other, right? So because there's got to be a gajillion different possible templates. Here's one that we created. This one, I really like this one. So last summer, I had a bunch of United Airlines people in my class, and we as a part of class created a generic template around aircraft damage due to impact. Well, let's dig into that a little bit. So what I would do here, and I'm not going to actually change this one, but I'm going to walk you through the template because it's actually pretty detailed, which was one of the critiques of this, and I'll explain that in just a second. So aircraft damage due to impact. Well, you have impact with force. Yeah, that's just the same as this one over here. Remember, this is exactly the same as this one. All right, but in this case, we're looking at an airplane. And imagine now, by the way, these are planes on the ground being moved to from the ramp, etc. So yeah, it's let's see here. Um, yeah, so it gives you an idea as to what characterization of aircraft damage we're talking about. So let's look at impact. Note here that we've made a modification. Just because we have these patterns doesn't mean we don't modify them from time to time. We always can do whatever we need to do. So note that there's a difference here. We're going to characterize what kind of impact it was. Did the aircraft strike something, or did something strike the aircraft? All right. So this is where we kind of went this or this. So if the aircraft struck something, you've got the aircraft moving, something in the pathway. And here's an addition. The aircraft did not stop prior to the collision. Why is that? Because there were no wing walkers present, right? Because maybe the pilots were, or maybe the pilots were unaware of the hazards, or maybe the wing walkers were present, but the aircraft still didn't stop. And that's, as I dig in further here, the wing walker's not aware of the hazard at all, or the wing walkers were not aware of the hazard in time to stop, or maybe they are aware of the hazard, but the system broke down, maybe because of communication equipment breakdowns, or a breakdown in nonverbal communication, or a breakdown in direct verbal communication. So it could be, these are all combination possibilities. All right, so like and with digging in deeper and deeper, you can see like something struck the aircraft. Well, what was it? What was the aircraft moving under its own power, or was it being towed? So as if you look at a template like this, it's actually there's quite a lot going on here. So that was one of the critiques was, well, maybe you guys took the templatization of this event too far. And I don't know that we did, honestly. I still, me personally, if I were called on to investigate an incident of ramp aircraft damage, like when the aircraft is damaged while it's being towed or while it's moving around on the ramp, not in the air. Okay. I would absolutely open this thing up. I would save it as something, and then I would save it as something different. And then I would go through this list to see, was it one of these? Was it something else? And I always reserve the right to add more to it if I need to. Okay. So if you need to, you can just it's a tool that you can use. But because it's templatized, it really takes a lot of cognitive load off of you. Okay, so just kind of looking at the time, and I think you kind of are getting the idea here. I do want to pull up one more, and that is a caught between template. This is a safety related template. Here I've got sticky or potential sticky. Do you know what sticky means? That means stuff that'll kill you. Okay. You can replace the stuff with a different word if you want, which is what our friends at Quanta do. Here, it's a caught between event. So here we've got a person contacted with sufficient force. This is a modification of the damage pattern. Now we're talking about a human damaged because they were contacted by a machine, object, etc., and we would fill in the specifics there with sufficient force. And that could be because there was high kinetic or potential energy in the system, along with a sudden or unexpected release, along with a lack of or ineffectiveness of any existing mitigation factors. Okay, so here we're templatizing where did the force come from? And then on top, well, how would they contact it? Well, they were there and it was moving, right? We talked about this a little bit earlier. So that's where we see an impact cause pattern applied to a human base and with some a little different language. And so why was the machine moving in that direction? We had maybe it was unexpected. Maybe it was known and or predictable but unguarded, or maybe there were environmental factors. Okay, so and you might be thinking to yourself, well, those are I would do those a little differently. Great, no problem. If it's helpful, I would encourage you to do it a little differently, and then share it with us. Right? We're using these as job aids to make the process a little more well, a little faster and a little more complete, and to make life easier for the investigator, especially if you're a new investigator, right? But even for an existing one like me, or existing or a more experienced one, that's still extremely helpful. Okay, so why was the person or body part in that location? Did they intentionally place it there? Now, that's I'm not pointing the finger at them, but I am examining their behaviors. I am examining what they're doing, or was it unintentional? What about awareness of the hazard? Was there any kind of pre-job hazard assessment, or if there was it effective, or some other reason why they may or may not have been aware? And what about the effectiveness of barriers or safeguards? Were there none, or were the ones that were there not effective? Right? So, yeah, another template as to how we might something that we might use in order to like make the process of investigating an event like this faster and more complete. Okay, so I kind of think that's enough. What I would say to wrap it up is that as you get more experience, you recognize patterns and similarities. As you uh, as you then take those recognized patterns and similarities and create templates out of them, you find that the process itself is easier, faster, more complete, easier to reproduce. And it's something that we're keenly aware of and that we will be building into a 9.x revision. So when CosLink comes out, we've got a pretty big project underway right now where we're redesigning the front end and the user interface of CosLink, and that's kind of taken up all our resources. But once that's done, then we will immediately start looking at things like building a template library, template capabilities, and the ability to share and to compare. And then as we even look further on, we'll look at tying in the FMEA module, and so bringing defined failure modes into the cause and effect template. So it's just a whole host of useful development ideas that are going to come out of this templating world. So with that, I would just say thanks a lot. I'm going to see if anybody has any questions or comments, and also see if anybody wants to, like, do you want me to build one of your own? Because I'll just stay on the line. If you want me to hang out with you for a little bit, it's no problem. I'll let you talk, and then we can build a couple of these out our own.
And I also wanted to just plug in that
Yep.
Brian will be at the Spokane, Washington Governor Industrial Safety Health Conference. It's a mouthful. So he'll be there next week presenting on two sessions in the morning of September 25th, which I believe is a Wednesday. No, sorry,
Oh, it's a
Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday, September 25th. So if you're based in Washington, feel free to connect further with Brian there in person.
That's right.
Also have several public courses happening in the month of October. On October 14, if you're an existing CosLink user or interested in learning more of CosLink, our RCA software, we are hosting a half-day virtual workshop to just do cause and effect analysis on October 14th. And then we are also hosting our last in-person course of the year in Midland, Michigan, and we'll be hosting RCA specialist and a RCA master course. So if you're interested in signing up for our in-person courses, this would be the best opportunity to do so for the remainder of this year.
Yeah. And if you can't, then there's a virtual course too. So this cause and effect charting class, this is the first time that we've done. We're just going to focus on cause and effect charting logic. And so it's really just sort of a meat and potatoes course. And so if you want to learn about cause and effect charting, or you want to have a review or dig a little deeper into things that we're talking about today, and then certainly join up. It's cheap. I think, I don't know, what do we charge you, Michelle? $200. Super cheap. And then you get to spend 4 hours with me, and it'll be fun. I guarantee it.
Oh, it's
Um,
you. Okay.
I'm doing it. Yeah,
All
first
right.
time, first class. Well,
Okay.
unless somebody arm wrestles me and wins. So I don't know. Maybe they will. I like it. So,
Well, thank you for joining our webinar today. If you have no further questions, feel free to email us if you're interested to learn more about any specific template for your specific industry or
yes.
sector. And we're
Yeah, and
happy to
put me
help.
on the spot. If you want me to build one for you, I will. Okay. So, just get in touch and
All
have
right.
a great weekend.
Thanks, guys. Bye.